Hagbaha? Okay, great. You okay with it? You all right? Okay. All right. Then I could also use a Galila. Do you want to ask Ann Danon if she'd like to do Galila? Ask Ann. Yeah. You're going to do blessings also? You do? Yeah. Man, it's time. Good morning. Almost there. Are we live? You're welcome. Thank you. No. Shabbat Shalom. Page 68. Modani Lifanecha Melechai V'Kayam Shehechazarta B'Nishmati V'Chemla Rava Emunatecha Rava Emunatecha Modani Lifanecha Melechai V'Kayam Shehechazarta B'Nishmati V'Chemla Rabbi Munatecha Rabbi Munatecha Rabbi Munatecha. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's great to be back together worshiping, and if you, everybody in the room is fully vaccinated, which is great, and now we allow, if you wish, you are permitted to worship without a mask on. You are welcome to keep your masks on to protect yourself and others. If you want to take your mask off, if you're a student, ask your parents first, okay? Check with your parents. Welcome to everybody watching online. I know you're watching our live stream online, and you can follow along in the prayer book by going to our website. Go to our website, and under virtual resources, you will see a link to our prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah. Page 78. Oh, our fifth grade is going to be leading us in a lot of our worship this morning. Thank you, fifth graders. Looking forward to both the prayers you're going to lead us in and your own creative thoughts that you have prepared to share with us this morning. Page 78. Let's read together. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God, and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol b'sar ish. On page 80, we begin the morning blessings, and we're going to chant our way through these blessings. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasek vivina, lahavchin ben yom uvein laila. That's the longest one of them, and all the others are much shorter, so you really can do them. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, zokev kifufim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten layaev koach. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hama'avir shena me'enai, utenuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tselem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. We're on the top of page 86. Continue together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants and the descendants of all your people Israel, may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamilamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Now, after reciting the blessing for the study of Torah, one goes directly to a text of Torah, which can be from Torah, from Mishnah, from Talmud, and this passage is a Talmudic passage on page 88. Let's read together. These are things that are limitless, of which a person enjoys the fruit of the world, while the principle remains in the world to come. They are honoring one's father and mother, engaging in deeds of compassion, arriving early for study morning and evening, dealing graciously with guests, visiting the sick, providing for the wedding couple, accompanying the dead for burial, being devoted in prayer, and making peace among people. But the study of Torah encompasses them all. Page 102. We read responsively. Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy in countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to shine like sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like young deer, we could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to bless your name for a 10,000th of the many myriads of times you granted favors to our ancestors and to us. On page 105, the conclusion of the warm-up section of the morning service called Psukei de Zimra, snippets of song, is this blessing at the bottom of page 105 about how God loves a good song. And so this is Dan Nichols' melody for this blessing. So it's been a while since I played this, long time. So. Baruch Atah Adonai El Melech Gadol Batishbachot El HaHodaot Adon HaNiflaot Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Zimra Melech Elchei HaOlamim Melech Elchei HaOlamim. Let's do it again. Baruch Atah Adonai El Melech Gadol Batishbachot El HaHodaot Adon HaNiflaot Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Zimra Melech Elchei HaOlamim Melech Elchei HaOlamim Melech Elchei HaOlamim. Page 106, and a few of our fifth graders are going to come up and lead Chatzi Kaddish. So those of you who know that you're on for leading Chatzi Kaddish, please come on up and help us with that. There's a whole bunch of you. Okay. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברך חיותי וימליך מלכותי וחי כל יום וחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו Shmei Rabba Melorach, L'olam Lo vitnaser, vitadar, vitalev, vitalal, shemei dekudasha, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ta'amiran ve'alma, yimeru.
Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Yai la lai 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach. HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. We continue on page 110. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvorei choshech oseh shalom uvorei et hakol hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam bechokma asita mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha v'al me'orei or she'asita yefa'arucha sela or chadash al Zion ta'ir v'nizkechu lanu mehera le'oro baruch atah Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. Page 114. Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod, Kivod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod, Kivod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Page 116. Harry, could I ask for help for a moment? Could you help me by leading the Ahavta? Thank you.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha uv'chol meyodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'vitarta bam V'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'aderech ובשופך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטודפות בין עיניך, וקרתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרוהו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, ואני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Page 121, we read responsively. Or as lots of students like to say, we read responsibly, which works too. It isn't exactly what I had in mind, but it also should be true as well. The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, nor learn war anymore. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God. We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy. Praise to God Most High. Blessed is God and deserving. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Norah tehilo. Osef eleh. Who is like you? Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? When Moses and the children crossed the sea, they sang to you with songs of joy. Who is like you, Adonai? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Norah tehilo. Osef eleh. Osef eleh. Zur Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Uvtechinu mecha, Yehuda ve'Yisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai tzivaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Our fifth grade's going to lead us in the Amidah, so I'd like to call up all of our fifth graders. We're on page 124. And you know what? I'm going to get us started, and then you guys are going to take over. So let's all turn around. 132, bottom of the page. This shall You know, the Amidah consists of a series of prayers after which we come to personal prayers, always come at the end of the Amidah. So we're going to go right to the personal prayers now. Judith?
So students spent some time in class. The focus of the fifth grade year has been on the Amidah. There's two sections. In the first half of the year, they've been focusing on this section of the prayer, the Amidah, is what replaced all our sacrifices, Karban, which means draw close to God. This is our draw close to God section. It includes some bowing, it includes personal prayer. And students were asked, if you could really say one thing to God and know that God was listening, not necessarily acting on it, but listening, what would you say? And they took it very seriously, and you're about to hear their personal thoughts. And this is a time of the prayer service where we pause and we add our own personal thoughts. In fact, they say that if you haven't said one new thought during this time, you haven't really reflected on the Amidah. Jewish thought isn't, though, demanding God, God do this, God do that. It's actually asking God to always help us, to partner with us. And you'll see that tone in students' prayers.
Shabbat Shalom. Our students, your children, and members of our congregation have done an amazing job, and I'm really proud of their efforts and the studying that we've done towards the Amidah, and this is a culmination of some of it.
Dear God, throughout my lifetime, I have noticed that the world seems to be heating up and the climate is changing, but we don't seem to do much about it. While we say fossil fuels are warming up the planet, we still use them every day. I really hope that the generations to come will be able to enjoy their lives and our planet as much as I do. Please help them do so. Thank you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. Sincerely, Ali.
Dear Adonai, please let the people in and out of my life be safe for as long as they shall live. Please let there be peace, no more wars, no more battles, and no more fights. Thank you for family, friendship, life, and everything. Ruby Plummer.
Dear God, I could never thank you enough for protecting my family and friends and for giving life to all living creatures on this earth, including humans. I would like to ask for all humans to be happy and healthy for the rest of their lives. Also, Adonai, please help end fighting so there will be no more wars.
Adonai, thank you for providing sustenance throughout the world. Thank you for giving me such a loving and caring family and great friends. Thank you for including me in the Jewish culture. Thank you for giving me a nice home and a nice neighborhood. Thank you for providing me with a good education. By Henry.
O Adonai, our God, you are the one who has provided sustenance throughout the world, spread peace and happiness, and blessed us with your shelter. You gave Moses the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai to teach us what is right and what is wrong. You provide education and intelligence to all. You give justice and liberty to your people. You created a whole world for us to live in. O Adonai, our God, thank you for everything you have done for us.
Dear Adonai, many harsh things have been happening out in the world, like the pandemic, bad things going on in people's homes, and violence between countries. The pandemic has caused many separation issues between families and caused family members to be farther apart. Adonai, could you please help people realize that family is the most important thing and that they should spend more time with them? God, could you please also help ensure the safety of my family and friends? It would mean a lot to me. Could you please stop the violence going on everywhere, even if we're just for a second? Perhaps to make people realize that it's not worth it to fight anymore. Let us all pray for peace in the world. From Torah.
They are beautiful, beautiful prayers. I think that we're all deeply moved by these prayers. The conclusion of the Amidah is on page 142. Oseh Shalom. In the Amidah and for your beautiful, wonderful, heartfelt prayers. Thank you. Now we're going to continue with the Torah service, so you can all go back to your chairs. So we're about to stand up, and here I'm going to just ask for some help, and I wonder if I could get a couple of our teachers, maybe Anna and Joy, to help me out when we take the Torah out of the ark. So thank you very much for being on deck without realizing it. We're going to use the Torah that's on the left, okay? And in one moment, when I start singing, we're going to open, the two of you open up the ark. Which one of you wants to carry the Torah?
I'll do it. Sure.
Okay.
I've done it recently. Do you want to do it? I'll do it.
You'll do it? And then we'll make, All right, one lap around so
Yeah,
that
what's
everybody
the
can get
path?
to it. And, well, I go up the center aisle and then come back down. When it comes back up here, Joy, take the crowns up. Crowns go here, Torah cover over the first chair, the yad on the table, Torah cover over the first chair. Okay? Good. Ah, we know what to do. So we are on page 244, and I ask you to please rise. Ein kamocha va'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kemasecha, malchutecha, malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha, bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim, heitiva v'ertzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim. Ki v'cha levad bataknu, melech elram v'nisa adon olamim. Page 246. Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah, u'davar Adonai Yerushalayim. Page 248. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah. Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema and Torah service is recited call and response style, leader first and then the congregation. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai iti, u'leromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagedura v'hatiferet, v'hanetzach v'hahod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, Ve'amit na'aseh lechol lerosh. Al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, al shlosha divarim, ha'olam omed. Al shlosha divarim, Al shlosha divarim, Al shlosha divarim, ha'olam omed. Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Thank you, Anna. You may be seated. A word about our Parsha this morning, and then we're going to read a brief selection from this morning's Torah reading, after which we'll also hear the Haftarah chanted this morning by Harry Radowski, and we'll talk about a little bit about this morning's Torah reading. Simon is doing us a favor here, and he's bringing around copies of the Chumash. So we'll need to share. and I'll give you the page number. While he's doing that, let me explain what we're about to read. This is, I could use a gabbai. You want a gabbai for me, Lisa? Thank you. This is Parashat Shmini, and from the book of Leviticus. And this is one of two places in the Torah where we read about which animals are permitted to eat, which animals one is not permitted to eat. And with regard to these animals, they come in categories. I'll talk about the categories afterwards. But the categories, the way they categorize the animals, the first two categories are very clear. They give us a rule about what you can eat, what you can't eat, and then various examples of things you might get confused about because they qualify in one rule but not another. So, for example, the first category deals with mammals. And which mammals is one allowed to eat? Well, you probably know some of this. Give me an example of a mammal that one would be permitted to eat within the context of the Torah. Not what you might eat, but rather, go ahead, Lily, what do you say? Cows. Cows, there you go. It's a perfect example. Cows can eat grass. So animals that can eat grass, or actually technically they're ruminants, they have multi-chambered stomachs, they're okay for eating so long as they have split hooves, which a cow does. What kind of animals don't have hooves? Mammals. Give me an example of a mammal, Ruby, that doesn't have hooves. Do you have one at home, by any chance? A dog. Oh, yes, a dog. What does a dog have instead of a hoof? A paw. Animals with paws are not permitted. So there's an example, right? They give you the rule first, and then they start identifying animals that look like they might qualify on one end, like they're ruminants, but they don't have split hooves, or they have split hooves, but they're not really ruminants, they don't chew, they don't eat grass. So, all right, by the way, the basic rule about mammals, if it would just as soon eat you, you are not allowed to eat it. Now, then it goes on. In the second category also gives a rule first. But the third category, interestingly, is the one I'm going to read, and there's no rule. And all it gives is a long list of prohibited birds. And we can't actually figure out exactly why some birds are permitted and others are not, because there's no rule stated. And we have some idea about some of them. It's pretty clear that birds that eat carrion. Who knows what carrion is? Tricky word. Dead meat. Birds that are scavenger birds clearly are not permitted. But it's other than that, it really is not clear why some birds are permitted and others aren't. And so in honor of this week's Parsha, I wore my bird tie, which I was commenting, Trish, earlier, that your crane tie kind of fits that theme, even if that was not your intent. All right, good, okay. So the other problem with this particular portion is that it is a long list of birds, and we don't actually know what some of these birds are, because the identification of what they were in the biblical period has been lost to us. So we can only take, the translation is a guess, but in many cases that's all it is a guess about which birds they likely would have been. You can find the Torah reading, it's a brief selection, on page 713 of the Chumash. If you've got the Plout commentary there, open up to page 713. I am reading from Leviticus chapter 11, beginning in verse 13. Again, it's page 713. It's Leviticus chapter 11, beginning in verse 13. And let me find this first, make sure, there it is. Okay. And our Aliyah will be recited this morning by the Honorable Judith Radowski. Ta'amod Yehudit bat Dina ve'Ephraim.
Baruch hu et Adonai Havorach.
Baruch Adonai Havarach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Havorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Thank you. Amen. Ve'et ele tishakatsu min ha'of lo yechalu sheketzem et hanesher ve'et ha'peres ve'et ha'ozniyah ve'et hada'ah ve'et ha'ayah leminah et kol orehev lemino ve'et bat haya'anah et hatachmahas ve'et hashachaf ve'et hanehetz leminehu ve'et hakohos ve'et hakos ve'et hashalach ve'et hayanshuv ve'et hatin shemet ve'et haka'at ve'et haracham ve'et hachasidah ha'anafah lemina ve'et haduchifat ve'et ha'atalev.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. Yishar kochech.
Oh, yasher koach. That was beautiful reading.
And as Lisa comments, it's fun because you have no idea what some of these birds are. Some of them are real clear. Nesher is an eagle. We know that that's consistent. Chasidah. Some of you are familiar with an organization, Chasidah. Chasidah means stork, right? We've got a few of these, but many of them.
Really important for those Harry Potter fans,
Yanshuf.
Which is an owl.
Oh, very important for Harry Potter fans to know what an owl is, yes. So we're going to lift and dress the Torah now. Simon is going to be our Magbeh to lift the Torah, and Dana is going to come up and dress the Torah. Simon, after you lift it, we're going to put it back down here, and then I'm going to tie it and bring it to you. You sit down one of the chairs over here, okay? I invite you to please rise. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, 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 Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Our Haftarah this morning comes from the book of Ezekiel. It's on page 1455 in the Chumash. Again, page 1455. This is the Haftarah. It's a special Haftarah for Shabbat Parah. Shabbat Parah, the Sabbath 3 weeks before Pesach. The 3 Shabbatot leading up to Pesach each have their own special Haftarah. And since they could be different Torah portions from year to year, you bump the regular Haftarah reading for that Torah portion. You substitute one of these. You substitute these 3 Haftarah readings. Okay, page 1455. This is Ezekiel chapter 36, To find where we are, after the blessing, Harry will begin in verse 22. So look down to verse 22. Okay.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hanemarim be'amet Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah uv'Moshe avdaho uv'Yisrael amaho Uvinviei ha'emet v'tzedek Lachein emor leveit Yisrael Ko amahar Adonai Elohim Lo l'ma'anchem Ani Yosef Beit Yisrael Kim l'shem kodshi Asher chilaltehem Vagoyim asher batem sham v'kadashti et shmi gadol hagadol v'hamichu laho bagoyim asher chilaltem b'tocham v'yadyu hagoyim ki ani Adonai ne'um Adonai Elohim Vehi kachi vachem le'einehem Lakachti etchem min hagoyim Vekibatzti etchem Mikol ha'aratzot Veheveti etchem el admatchem Vezarachti aleichem Mayim tihorim V'tahartem Mikol Tumotechem Umikol gilulechem ataher etchem v'natati lachem leiv chadash v'ruach chadasha etem b'kir b'chem v'hasiroti et leiv ha'even mibsharchem v'natati lachem leiv basar V'yed ruach etem b'kir b'chem v'yasiti eid asher b'chukai telechu v'mishpat tai tishmeruhu v'yasitem v'shavtem ba'aretz asher natati la'avotechem v'tem li le'aham V'anochi eyelachem le'elohechem.
The blessing after can be found on page 254. Students, you might want to turn to page 254 in the Siddur. Thank you. In the prayer book, Siddur, so that you could follow along with the blessing afterwards, page 254.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Sur kol halamim, sadiq b'kol adarot, hayah ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh, ha'medaber m'kayem, shekol devarahav, emet v'tzedek. Al Torah v'al ha'avodah, v'al ha'neviim, v'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, l'tishav v'limnucha, l'chavod u'l'tifaret. Al ha'kol Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu modim lach, umvarchim otach, yitbarach shimcha befi kol chai, tamid le'olam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh ha-Shabbat.
Amen. Yishar kol kacha. Thank you. What a pleasure to hear Haftarah chanted that way. Thank you. All right. We're going to just take a little look at the Torah reading. Honestly, I'm deeply moved by the creative readings that the students gave today, and so I don't want to detract from it, but we should do some Torah study on this week's Parashat. So go back into the Chumash. I know I directed you to the prayer book, but go back to the Chumash, the plowed commentary, the big book, and turn over to page 713, where you'll find the reading that I did. Page 713. Now, I said that the Torah divided up the animal kingdom into categories in order to address what animals you can eat within each category. So it divides the whole animal kingdom into sectors, and then within each sector it says some animals you can eat and some you can't. Now, biologists divide the animal kingdom into sectors, domains also today, right? What do we call those? Biologists here in the room. What do you call an area of the animal kingdom? Classes is one category, and I don't know the order of the categories. Species is one. Miranda. Wow. I didn't expect, actually, I didn't expect that detail of an answer. Thank you very much for clarifying that. There's only one of those that I remember, that's phylum. That's the only one I remember. But, okay, so they had a rudimentary way of categorizing the animal kingdom too. It makes sense. What are the categories of the animal kingdom? There are 4 categories. So let's look, you can look back to the beginning of chapter 11 and help me define what these categories are. What's the first category that we find in this chapter of animals? Somebody else, give me some other hand. Show me another hand. Exactly, land animals. It's not any more specific than that. It's just they looked around and said, well, some animals live on the land, which makes it pretty clear. So what's the second category? Look at verse 9. What's the second category? Anything that lives in the water. Notice they don't even distinguish between freshwater or saltwater, right? It's just anything that lives in the water. Third category, anything that lives in the sky. Anything that lives in the sky. Notice I'm actually not saying birds, but rather what lives in the sky, most of which are birds, aren't they? But they didn't know the difference between what's a bird and what's not a bird, and see if you could find the thing in this category that's not a bird. What's mentioned in this category that's not a bird? Go ahead, Henry, what is it? The bat. Was that what you were going to say? It's the bat. So that looked like a bird to them, the most vicious looking thing, but they were right. They're good. They're healthy. We want them, right? They're good for us. They are good for us, and they eat those things that we don't like. So, but then what's the fourth category? It's a little strange because we wouldn't intuitively think of this as a fourth category, and it's on the next page in verse 20. What's the fourth category? Go ahead, Allie. Winged swarming things. And yeah, it's like, really? And wait, you can eat some of those? Yeah. What's that, Miranda? Right. So notice that most of what we think of as insects, if they're insects, they've got more than 4 legs, right? How many legs do they have? 6. They've got 6 legs. If they've got more than 6, they're not insects, are they? All right? Judith?
I thought this was very practical because locusts come and they eat everything else you need to eat. And so if you don't eat the locust, you could end up having starvation.
Yeah, so you better be able to eat the locusts. If you have to, that's what you're going to eat. Henry? Yeah.
Except for.
Yeah. It's rather confusing because it sounds like they're all prohibited, but then it goes on to say, except if they hop on 2 of them or something like that. It's a little, Actually, of all the categories, this is the one that is the most inconsistent. It's pretty hard to follow the description. Yeah, go ahead, Torah. You know, I wonder what they would have done with that, because it doesn't walk, not only doesn't it walk on 4 legs, but it's not actually I don't think it's an insect either, so it is? A centipede, I don't know. Nonetheless, I don't know whether they meant to cover everything, but I assume they did. And I don't know if they had centipedes, though I assume they did. So I don't know how they dealt with it. I'm going to beg ignorance on this one. But I really want to, now that we've got the general idea, I actually want to focus in on a little bit of an ethical lesson here, and it's not the one you would think of, because yeah, we could discuss what you should eat, what you can't eat, what's the point, why bother. We could go on about that for a long time, and that's not where I'm going. Rather, I simply want to teach you to be sensitive about the language that you use, because you pointed out, Torah, who was it? No, it was Henry. You said abomination, right? That these animals are called an abomination. If you look at the passage I read, verse 13, the following, you shall abominate, which means you shall, there's really no good way to explain that. You shall regard as disgusting. Right? I don't know how else to explain abominate. Regarded as disgusting. And they shall not be eaten, they are an abomination, meaning they're a disgusting thing. I don't know if you would agree with that, but that's what it says. Now, those of you who read the Hebrew, I want you to read that Hebrew there, verse 13, Ve'et ele tishakatsu, min ha'of, from the birds. Tishakatsu, there's your abominate. Lo ye'achlu, you shall not eat them. Sheketz, haim. They're a sheketz, they're an abomination. This is a word that should not be used as an insult. It should not be used as a way of describing people. You wouldn't call somebody a disgusting thing, would you? That would be really cruel, hurtful, right? The word sheketz is in Yiddish, comes out as shegets, and the feminine form of shegets is shiksa. If you call somebody that, you are calling them a disgusting thing. Who would ever do such a thing? This is wrong. We should not use that language. It's like using prejudiced language about an ethnic group. You don't do that. So I beg you, if you're one of those people who's heard these words used casually to describe people who are not Jewish, that's wrong. We should avoid that language and not use words that are, I'm going to use a fancy word now, pejorative. Pejorative means a put down of somebody. You don't do that. There are neutral terms, and then there are prejudiced terms, and this is one of them. And so I pointed out, because it's right there in this week's Parashat, this week's Torah portion, what the word actually means. And so we shouldn't conflate it with a way of describing people in a prejudicial manner. I hope that those of you who are familiar with the Yiddish understand what I am referring to. Okay. And with that brief lesson in polite language, we're going to return the Torah to the Ark and then remain standing through Aleinu. I'm going to ask if the two of you could come back up and help with opening the Ark and putting the Torah back in the Ark, because I want to lead us in singing page 256. Page 256, please rise. It is a tree of life, and I'm fast to it. All of its supporters are happy. 182. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latekidu la'liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishachavim u'modim, Lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Page 284. Shehu notes shamayim v'yosed haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mima'al u'shchinatu zo begovhei meromim hu Eloheinu einod Emet Malkeinu, Efezulato, Kakatu, Betorato, Viadata Yom, Vahashevota, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai, Hu Elohim, Bashamayim Ima'al, Vial Haaretz, Mitachat Einod. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Page 295. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam levracha, may their memories be for blessing. Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon, Uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei rabba mivarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal shemei d'kudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechmata Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel and all the world, to which we say Amen. You may be seated, and looking for announcements for the upcoming week. We have tomorrow is it's not tomorrow. No, the safety and security team is sponsoring a safety workshop with the Pleasanton Police Department, to which everyone is invited, which will be on Sunday, April, what's the vacation week? April 3rd? Okay, April 3rd, 3 p.m. here, and you are all welcome to participate. Also, that evening is the Sinai Memorial Chapel program on planning for a funeral. And I really recommend participating in this online program so you can learn about how do you plan. What are the steps? You want to think through those things before you actually need them. And after our closing song, we're going to recite Kiddush and Motzi Trish, I'd like to do that right here rather than gather around and back. But we'll have cups, right? Or did we pour cups or not?
I poured cups, and then there's bags that have little colors.
Oh,
Other things, sweet things, because learning Torah is sweet.
that is great.
Or chocolate.
All right. So there are individual bags for you and cups of juice or wine. The red cups are wine. The white cups are grape juice. And for a closing song, I thought we would get ready for Pesach by singing a Pesach melody. Page 362 at the bottom of the page. Leshana habaa Berushalayim, 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 Lishana haba'a 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 Berushalayim. Well, Colin, that is very kind of you. Thank you very much for that. I presume that's for me. Would you put that down right on that table for me, please? Thank you so much. Okay. Kiddush and Motzi. Here goes. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen l'chaim. And so you say there's a challah in here. Indeed, there is. Look at this. I don't know how you're able to braid that like little tiny. That's great. Yeah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Thank you again to our 5th grade class and their teachers. So grateful for you leading us in worship this morning. Shabbat shalom.